All right. So, how does Great Britain decide that they are going to win the American Revolutionary War? They come up with what is called the British three-pronged attack, like a fork. Okay, they are in essence trying to cut off the New England colonies, New York, um, and Boston, Connecticut, all those colonies from the rest, from the middle colonies, from the South. And they think if they do this, they can capture whatever colonial troops are in New England and put an end to the war. So for the first part of the process, you have General John Burgoyne, or also known as Gentleman Johnny, because he liked to travel around with all of his luxury goods, like literally 30 wagons full of goods, champagne, china, feather beds, that type of thing. He's supposed to travel south from Canada, so he is up. He's up north in Canada near Fort Ticonderoga because by this time the British have taken back the fort since the colonists kind of left like five guys in charge of the fort, so it was an easy takeover for the British. The second person is going to be St. Leger. We don't really talk about him, but his goal is to move east from Lake Ontario. And General Howe, who we will have mentioned in a few other battles, he's going to be moving north from New York. Their plan is to meet in Albany and destroy the Patriot Army there. So basically, continually pushing the colonial army towards Albany. That is the plan. Here is a map that actually might better explain it. You can see St. Leger is up near Lake Ontario. Burgoyne is Fort Ticonderoga, and even though it says Clinton, it's actually supposed to be Howe, coming from New York. Um, and the reason that is because Clinton will eventually replace Howe. All right. So the first thing that happens that will cause problems with having the three-pronged plan be a success is that General Howe decides instead of heading directly north, he's going to capture Philadelphia first. Philadelphia at the time is where the Continental Congress is located. This is where they are trying to make plans and raise money to fund the Patriot cause or the colonial cause to help fight the American Revolutionary War. So William Howe will basically cause the Continental Congress to flee. They're going to leave Philadelphia, and I believe nobody was captured. So I think they were given enough notice that they were able to get out of town quickly. But the point is, Howe actually ends up capturing the capital of the colonial cause in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Keep in mind, once again, he's supposed to be heading north towards Albany. So the other part is there's a battle at Germantown. I really don't ask you about this, but just in case you're interested, Howe ends up coming into contact with Washington. There's a battle. And what ends up happening is Howe, instead of heading towards Albany after this battle, decides to stay and set up camp near Germantown, Pennsylvania. So once again, he's supposed to be heading north to Albany, and he can't be heading north if he's hanging out in Germantown, Pennsylvania. Other reasons why the three-pronged plan will not work. First of all, Benedict Arnold, who is still a patriot, still a colonial leader at this time, he's able to stop some of the British troops near Fort Stanwix, New York. And then Burgoyne, who is carrying around all of his luxury goods and has his mistress and everybody with him, and like 7,000 troops, he is constantly slowed down by the colonists using the guerrilla war tactics, the same tactics that they used during the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And this has been a very successful thing for them. Burgoyne will eventually retreat to Saratoga because he's just being slowed down and being attacked by the colonists. So he decides, I need to just take a moment, regroup, think of a strategy here. Well, that leads to the Battle of Saratoga. So in October 1777, you have the colonial slash patriot leader, General Horatio Gates, who will lead a battle or lead a fight against General Burgoyne. Burgoyne, who is expecting reinforcements to show up, is obviously wrong because they don't show up. And the reason why the Battle of Saratoga is important is number one, Horatio Gates gets major credit. This is a huge victory. It's a huge victory in general for the American patriots. I mean, they haven't had a lot of success since the Battle of Long Island. So this is a really good. And more importantly, if you look at this next slide, number one is a colonial victory. Number two, Howe is eventually going to be replaced by Henry Clinton from the map earlier. And the most important part is this is when France recognizes American independence and they truly decide to join the cause. They see, all right, the Americans, they actually have a chance of winning. We want to be on that winning side. So they decide, all right, let's join it. And that's really the significance of Saratoga. Huge win, and the French decide to ally, and this will be a major turning point. This is like the major turning point of the American Revolutionary War. Also, it stops any hopes of the three-prong plan, the British three-prong plan, from working. Then we're going to head into the winter at Valley Forge. This is often talked about and referenced quite a bit. And really what it is, you set up your winter camp. You can see some cabins in the background. A lot of men just have tents. A lot of men don't have shoes. They've been fighting for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and it's a really harsh winter. Obviously, you can imagine if you're in a camp, sanitation is probably an issue, so you're going to start developing dysentery, diseases like typhoid, pneumonia, things like that will start spreading, and that will kill a lot of men. Obviously, you can read the number there. 2,000 colonial soldiers died. Many more will actually desert and head home because they don't want to be in this snow camp where everybody's getting sick and starving. But many decide to stay. And one of the things that helps them out is, I think it's Nathaniel Greene who goes out on foraging parties for the colonists, and they start bringing home, deer and hunting, things like that, or going to the neighborhoods throughout the countryside. And if you had a cattle, they would basically take your cow from you and give you an IOU in return. And so that's how they would start feeding some of the men. So there was a lot of foraging going on. So the important people, this is the Marquis de Lafayette. He's best friends basically with George Washington, so much so that he will name a son after George after the American Revolutionary War is over. He's a big believer in the American Revolutionary cause, the idea that we all have natural rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. He wants that for his own country, and he's always constantly encouraging, saying the French will join. And this is obviously before, and then once they do join after the Battle of Saratoga, he just helps the morale, and he just lends an air of authority to George Washington. Also, he is there at Valley Forge. The most important person is Frederick von Steuben. He's actually a Prussian officer who was part of the Prussian military. He will be excused from his position because of his sexual orientation, which is Prussia's loss and America's gain, because he was amazing at what he does. Brilliant military tactician, fantastic at training the troops. And so while they're at Valley Forge, starving, freezing, his job is to make the colonial ragtag army a true fighting force. And so he helps train and drill them. Most of this is done through an interpreter, but I mean, it's amazing. Apparently, the turnaround he was able to get from the American troops by working with them that winter, and they came out of the winter being more of a cohesive fighting unit. So the significance is that this is where the Continental Army really comes together. And this is what I mentioned the other day in class too. This is like, the training montage from the video where they would like be doing push-ups and shooting guns and things like that. This is their turnaround moment. And then the next thing we'll talk about, we are almost done. So please just do note that the Articles of Confederation, this is America's first form of government, signed July 9th, 1778. We will be talking about this after this chapter.